Yeah, will they or will they not? Asanda, some of us are of the view that perhaps they are bluffing. The packs are just too good to be let go at this early stage.
I'm saying it's a bluff. They're definitely trying to negotiate with the president using the media and what they hope to be public outrage about BELA and some of its elements. I think that, the DA did not win the election. They didn't have a right to govern. The only right to govern they have is that which they're given by the ANC outside of the Western Cape. And so if they pull out of the GNU, they are effectively giving up various ministries, ironically including the education ministry. So they're not going to pull out. It doesn't make sense at all strategically. So this is just another bluff by the DA. But I think what it also does is it exposes something which I find quite sinister, which is that the DA seems to think that there is no GNU if there is no DA, whereas that's not true. If the DA leaves and the EFF comes in, that makes the government a government of national unity. So with everything that's going on, Floyd Shivambu having gone to the MK and Julius Malema perhaps having changed his mind about his participation in the GNU, they will be in trouble if they leave because they will be very quickly replaced.
What also makes it interesting is the fact that you have the Minister of Basic Education being the DA minister as well.
Well, I think it's quite a hilarious chess move by the ANC to take the one policy that the DA doesn't want, sign it into law under a DA minister who would then have to implement it. Because remember, what BELA does is that it gives the education minister more powers than it has, and it takes power away from SGBs, which have been accused of standing in the way of transformation in terms of the hiring of black teachers, of transformation in terms of how the curriculum is delivered, and of transformation in terms of who gets accepted into former white schools and who doesn't.
Yeah. Well, I suppose we'll have to wait and see because I think the president will argue that it is his prerogative to sign it. It is his decision. Well, their argument is that this will fracture the government of national unity, as you put it. They think that without them there will be no government of national unity. We are waiting to see what will this do, and I suppose we'll get the answer after Friday.
Well, I think, the DA should have learned by now that these empty threats don't work, because remember that the DA played this kind of tricks in Gauteng and ended up losing out and not becoming part of the provincial GNU there. So it's not as if we haven't seen a case where the DA overplayed its hand and government moved very swiftly and other political parties very quickly occupied their space, and Gauteng hasn't fallen apart so far because the DA is not part of the GNU. And so I think that, there is kind of this delusion in the DA where they think they're a bigger political party than they are. They only have 20% of the vote, and there are 80%, the other political parties who have 80%, and half of that 80% belongs to the ANC. So it's still the ANC's prerogative to govern this country and to implement the laws that they think are the best fit for this country, particularly because the DA thinks that only Afrikaans is a valid mother tongue. So they want to argue for Afrikaans, but will not implement Xhosa. They will not implement isiZulu. They will not implement Setswana and other languages within suburban communities, regardless of the presence of black people who speak these languages.
Yeah, is that what they mean by saying that this will has constitutional implications for the right to mother tongue education?
Well, I suspect that that's exactly what they're talking about, because you must remember that one of the things that's under threat when it comes to BELA is Afrikaans superiority, and the fact that Afrikaans has been placed at a higher level than all the other languages outside of English, which is, of course, an apartheid hangover and should never have been. In fact, even English shouldn't be the priority that it is, but English gets away with it because it's seen as a global language and a language that, most of the world speaks, not necessarily as a first language, but it's almost like the language that the world has decided is the language they want to use for business, even though it doesn't have the most speakers of the language as native speakers. So Afrikaans has had this legacy. It's been 30 years of democracy, and Afrikaans continues to be prioritized and continues to ensure that particularly black kids fail because they cannot do this language. And that is a travesty, considering that young black people died in 1976 so that no black child should ever be forced to study in Afrikaans. And yet here we are 30 years later, and you got a political party that claims to be for all South Africans fighting to keep Afrikaans, which basically is a language that many feel subjugates them and is a trauma and a trigger from the apartheid past.
Got you. Thank you so much, Asanda. We really appreciate your time, man.